It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at The Beholder number 23. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. Today from February of 1981, this is The Beholder number 23. Hope you enjoy the video. We're continuing to look at The Beholder, a fantastic fanzine that was created by Guy Duke and Mike Stoner from the UK back in the late 70s. This is the size we're used to. Heavy stock cover. It's green. Doesn't show up on the green screen here, but a green cover, paper folded in half, stapled down the side. Let's take a look at the cover art. So this is not attributed inside. Down at the bottom, it looks to me like there's a little name that looks like it says more, but that's the only clue I have as to who this might be. Obviously, it's some sort of a wizard here with some undead behind. Makes me sort of feel like probably it's a necromancer of some sort. But anyway, I like his hair and his headband. He looks like he could be in a rock band if he weren't busy raising the dead. In terms of content, we have an editorial, an article on emblems, which is we'll talk about. It's for magic enchantment, DIY, some quotes, some silly quotes from their campaign, a new Q&A, questions they're asking you, the subscriber, to give them information about where you are in the role-playing hobby. Dragon Isle is the new adventure. Watt is some random stuff. Then we have a number of articles. Minor mishaps is just some discussion for the DM. Magic jar, new magic items. A discussion for the DM about using mazes. Info, which is just a little bit of information about some stores that sell their the Beholder fanzine. And finally, Mini DM's Corner. Again, a little bit of brief articles about, or ideas about, for DMs. Guy Duke and Mike Stoner. One article by Nick Clifton. Alex Self provides some art in the form of his Folly the illustrated comic, and then whoever this is, Blank Moore, who signed the front, would be our cover artist for this issue. Here is the original printing, 50 pence, green cover. I don't have a subsequent printing of this one. It's been kind of hard to find because I have a couple different iterations of my Beholder collection, but I don't have issue 23 except in the very first one I got. The editorial, fairly brief. This is a D&D fanzine, as they say, and they say there's hope that we're going to live beyond our 25 issues that we, Mike and Guy, are going to put out. More to come on that. They mentioned that there was some discussion that maybe a group of people that surrounded them would put together a copy, number 26, that would be information from the local gaming club. That they'd get together with articles for that. I don't think that happens. Some information about the subscription, the fact that 25 is the last issue you'll get from them. The word search answer from last issue. Remember, there would be letters left over, and you're supposed to rearrange those and figure out what the word is. And that word is Tyrannosaurus Rex, 2 words technically. And finally, they make a comment that, from what we heard, most people did not appreciate the massive amount of pages devoted to this sci-fi game Space Opera in the last issue. But at least they said we got the word out there. We think it's a great game and people should be playing it. All right, so here's I like this article. I assume this is Mike Stoner. Don't know that, but it's one of those guys. So magic items, they say, can get kind of boring. And so one thing, obviously, is you give IQ to your swords. You could consider giving IQ to other things as well. But here's another idea, is to put some type of an emblem or crest on things like swords, shields, armor, helmet, boots, anything you could sort of emblazon or carve an emblem into, and then give those different emblems, give different magic effects. And then they also have this idea that if you combine multiple pieces, like maybe you have a sword and a shield with the same emblem, maybe it's even an increased effect. So here's just their examples. The eagle is a stylized red bird on a yellow background, and they are weightless, as if a feather fall was cast on them. So if you let go, they drop very slowly, and therefore they won't get damaged from falling. Certainly could be better I mean, that's good, right? But you can think of a lot of better things you could give it. The skull, a white skull on a black background, gives you a sense danger, like a spidey sense. This comes down to a 1 in 10 chance per item carried to feel something is wrong when it's near you. So they say basically something within 200 feet, something dangerous is nearby. You're about to step onto a pit, whatever it would be. Give you the spidey sense roll. A castle, a blue rook-like picture on a white background, the symbol of safety and security. They basically give you a ring of protection +1, but they won't let those stack. I don't have any idea why. That doesn't make sense to me. If the whole concept is to try and accumulate these things, right? So it becomes like a miniature quest. The golden lion on a yellow background, the symbol of ferocity and majesty, +1 damage in combat. This seems like maybe it does stack. And then the axe, a great silver axe on a brown background. This emblem signifies strength and gives you a +1 on your strength stat. Great concept. I think those 5 examples give you probably, if you're a creative DM, you could take those and you can just sort of see where this would go. All kinds of creative ideas you could use. I just finished reading Raymond Feist's Magician book, and for those of you who've read it, you know in there one of the characters named Thomas finds a sword, a shield, and armor. And he doesn't say that it's the fact that he has all 3 pieces, combined that is what gives him this sort of enchantment. It's a whole story if you haven't read it, but that, and then I read this article, and the 2 things seem to me to be connected. And this idea of how you would quest to try and, there were actually 4 pieces or 5 pieces that go together, right? And your character then is like, I like these bonuses. I'm going to, do whatever I can, go to some tower, find some sage, research, learn about it, and try and find another piece of the set. Could be some really good adventure campaign ideas. All right, so Nicholas Clifton says this is not a review. This is his suggestion on how to DIY your own Dungeon Master screen. And he goes through the basics, like, hey, get yourself some cardboard, some heavy tape to put this thing together. And then he has these ideas, says, look, you can do, 2-fold or 3-fold, depending on how much space you want. And goes through and talks about what he thinks you should put on what's facing you, and then discusses facing the players, whether you're going to put artwork out there or maybe some tables that they would want to use, right? As he says, the main thing you want to do is your combat tables, to hit tables, if you will. He's created this crazy, I think, chart where he has the armor class, and then across the top he has every category. Like, he combines fighters, clerics, thieves, magic users, and all monsters. And so every row he labels, so you don't have to look at more than one chart, but then it ends up making the chart really, really big. Nonetheless, I think it was a pretty good idea. The second thing he does is give you some ideas of other common tables you probably want to find. Saving throws, turning undead, for example, he suggests. Things like the stat modifications for the other stats, racial preference and reactions, if that's something you tend to do, number of attacks per round, list of all the weapons and the damage done, loyalty, spell recovery rules. He has a lot of stuff in here for wilderness encounters, like chance of becoming lost, outside movement rate, detection, hearing noise, the effects of grenade-like missiles, magic item saving throws, the effects of intoxication. Apparently that was common enough in his campaign. It merited space on the DM screen. And some wandering monsters. So anyway, I thought a good idea, especially back at the time when these things weren't readily available. This is the second time they've done this. I think this is inside jokes, to me at least. It feels like this is just silly stuff that came from their campaign. This all relates back to their space opera campaign. Here is their Q&A. This is where they're asking questions of the subscribers to get a better understanding of who they are. What issues have you read? What issues do you like the least? Rate our features. Do you think the adventure is the best thing we have in there? What's been the best adventure, the worst adventure? What type of games do you like besides D&D? Traveler, Chivalry and Sorcery, Rune Quest, Superhero, Space Opera, Dragon Quest, In the Labyrinth, or something else. Other than scenarios, what have been the 3 best articles, worst articles? What other type of articles would you like to see? How'd you find out about us? How do you feel about our services? Like, how well we get the fanzine to you on time. And then rate the following magazines or fanzines: The Beholder, Trollcrusher, White Dwarf, The Aerial Servant, Dragonlords, Stormlord, The Wanderer, Wyrm's Claw. I've got some of those and some of all of those, so we'll talk about the ones we haven't covered yet on this channel at some point. How can we improve the fanzine? And do you have any thoughts on the sci-fi and fantasy role-playing hobby? Let us hear them. It's interesting to me that in issue 23 they're asking this, which means most likely they don't get the answers back until after issue 24 has gone out, and issue 25 is the last issue they're going to do. But in any event, I think it's good they're still asking the questions. Here's our adventure. Guy Duke, adventure writer extraordinaire. It's a pretty decent sized one. And I like this one. Again, this one has a Norse theme to it. You're somewhere a little bit south of the sort of cold region, and you're in this bar, and this guy says, hey, there's this island with treasure on it. I'm headed past there, but I'll give you guys a ride. I need a crew, right? He said, I don't have a crew, and so if you'll service my crew, we'll go to this place. There's a little village there. I'll put in, let you guys out. You can go treasure seeking. I'll get a crew to take me up to the other village I need to go to. And then when I come back about 14 days later, I'll pick you guys up, take you back down, whatever little town you're in, right? So here is the water's on the right, and there's a few inlets, and there's this larger one here in the middle you would come into. And then, this is like, he likes to draw these little tiny maps, so insert. So there's the little village you would come into. And then you're going to have to go off and explore and discover 4 or 5 different things to enable you to successfully get into this island, because the island itself is surrounded by this really rocky area and this really bad, magically actually enchanted water system, so you'll get crashed into the rocks if you don't have the right things to help you get through to the island. So here's one little adventure down at the bottom. Here's another cave up here that you have to go up and look at. And here's a third little thing you have to make your way through in order to pick up these different clues or items that'll help you be successful. And there's a surprise at the end. There's a surprise at the end. I'm not going to tell you what it is, but there's definitely a surprise ending to this one. I think it's a really well done adventure. Okay, this is their random stuff, and here's an anonymous person talking about the Observer's Guide to Types of Role Players. So we've got the role player. This is the person who's all into role playing their particular character. And so this is the person who will, if their character's super brave, charges into death, even though the player knows he's going to die or she's going to die. Like, they always play the role play. The next thing here is the amateur dungeon designer. This is more, I think, a critique of the dungeon master, the people who never really grow out of this early stage, he said, and develop a better skill at DMing. The Monty Hall person, this is the character who shows up to play in your campaign. He's already level 20, has 4 rings of 3 wishes each. Or the person who claims he actually rolled up a monk using the 3d6 method. Or asks you casually, how is it again that I can become a god or demigod? The quoter, a real pain, he says. This is the person who's memorized every book and article from TSR magazine and quotes it to you at the table. The fanzine editor, the greatest people on earth, they say, tongue-in-cheek. The killer, this is the person whose answer to every encounter is, I pull out my weapon and I kill them. He says, lots of fun to DM these people because since they're so predictable, you can set up all kinds of nasty encounters. The snob, the person who comes but says they don't really like playing D&D, like to talk to you a lot about how Chivalry and Sorcery or RuneQuest are superior games rather than just enjoying the game they're playing. And finally, the enemy, which is most non-role players, and they say things like, this game is childish, I don't know why you play this, what's the point if no one wins, etc. So, as true today as they were back then, right? That's one of the interesting things about these articles. Okay. Minor mishaps. So this is a DMing article. His first thing was, you have these things that happen during the game where you need to roll, and maybe something's happened, some effect has happened to a character, and you don't want to trip them trigger them, let them know maybe that they've been charmed or poisoned or Geas has been cast on them, whatever. Like I said, unless somebody can see a magic user making motions and saying words, those spells should be cast without the player's knowledge. But how do you do that? He doesn't really come up with a great answer. He says, I just tell him something's going on, you don't know what it is. Some of those things require a good, mature player who will role play their character, in spite of the fact it's maybe not in their best interest. It takes a good player to do that. And as he said, a lot of times players know more than the character. And, again, you got to figure out how to deal with that, but he doesn't have any great, I don't think he has any great suggestions. He does say one of the things he likes to do is have lots of little random things happen, animals scurrying around, roll a dice, something breaks, to get your players completely paranoid so that then when something important does happen, it'll be the 15th thing that's happened, and they can't really keep track of whether something's important or not. I don't know that I love that idea. And then his final thing is, I like to create circumstances and coincidences. I think a lot of people call that railroading. But he says, players can get very sure of themselves, and I like to have things happen that maybe are outside of their control. Okay, I don't really go down for that. Magic jar. These are new magic items. The first one is the message fly. It's about 4 inches, so it's more of a beetle. But these are magically enchanted gems that then are enchanted, and they turn into a beetle. They grow wings, and they'll fly to a person, and then they pop open, and there's a little message in there for you. And the enchantment is how it homes in on a particular person. The related thing is the assassin fly. The Assassin's Guild has worked with evil magicians, and now they do the same thing, but when this little thing finds the person, instead of landing and opening to give them a message, it lands on them and injects them with poison. The crystal creature. These are little tiny carved animals of some type, and then when you throw them on the ground, they break and they turn into that animal and attack whoever's there. So not a good magic item, since the owner can't control it. The freeze block, this is a very clever one. So this is going to be a 6-inch cube with this mesmerizing, glowing, looks like a tiny star inside of it, just ever so slightly pulsing, right? Well, this is some great enchantment where at the instant a fireball was being created, it was time stopped and encased in ice. And so if this ice breaks or melts, the fireball is released right there on the spot. So it could be used cleverly, but only if you figure out what it is. Otherwise, at some point you carry this thing around, it's going to either break or melt and explode right in your face. So I thought that one was a pretty good magic item for my money. Next is the floating carpet, not the flying carpet. And this one basically falls like a feather fall. So the theory is, as you're falling, you would put this carpet out and then you would be able to drift down. I mean, you could use it if you had knowledge, like you wanted to go down a long shaft. You could get on this thing and float down without fear of taking damage. Doesn't go up, it only goes down. So it's okay. I thought it was going to be one that could basically not go forward and backwards, but basically just levitate, but that's not what it does. Swap bottles. This one seems silly. It's 2 bottles that are enchanted together. One's empty, one has a liquid in it. Whenever you try and pour the liquid out of the one, and the instant it gets to the edge of the bottle, it just goes in, by enchantment, it goes into the other one. And so as you turn it, it just basically fills the other one up. You can never get them open unless you break them. Added to which they say, in his campaign, or her campaign, who wrote this, I think it was probably Mike Stoner, they don't even put real potions in there. They just put colored water. So, all right, next we have the living boots from Jack Vance's Dying Earth. These are actually somehow alive. They give you a movement rate of 15. But if they're used for more than 4 hours in a row, there's a chance they actually die because they are a living organism. 5% chance per turn over 4 hours. Basically boots of striding and springing. And then finally, the Helm of the Sage is a helmet that has the consciousness of a dead sage in it. So if you wear it, you can get that. You can have that person's knowledge DM's got to roll up what that particular expertise was. And then finally we have the Belt of the Deceiver, a thick belt, large buckle that holds an average sized gem. If you press it in, you come under the effects of a feigned death. You just fall down, and you stay that way until the belt is taken off, and then for another 2 to 5 turns after that. So there you go. All right, this article, he talks about using mazes. I got to tell you, I read this article and I ended up with the same opinion I had when I started it, which is don't do it. Don't put mazes in your dungeon. As he said, back in the days when players mapped everything out, it was always considered a fun thing to give a maze, see if the players could get confused. He's gonzo here because he's talking about slides, levitation traps, teleportation traps, so that when you're walking around this maze, you can't even map it out because you're going to get moved to a different location. You have no idea where you are now, and now you got to start mapping the same maze or a different level of this maze from an unknown starting point. I don't think that sounds like fun. Maybe back in the day, that kind of thing was kind of a puzzle and people enjoyed the frustration of it and then the success of getting out of it. I find it just slows down the game. One person usually is really engaged and everybody else is either shouting over top of each other or just checked out. So that's my experience with mazes. Info. So they said people would ask where they can find the fanzine in terms of bookstores. I thought this, for historical purposes, might be kind of interesting to people, especially people that are over in the UK and might know some of these places. Games Workshop, as Devium Games, Games of Liverpool, Tangley Model Workshop, Forever People, Dungeons and Starships, Games Gallery, DG Kaysen, a place called Gamer, Clyde Models, Plymouth Model Center, Games Unlimited, Orwell Books, War and Peace, and Jewelcraft. All right, now we have the mini DM's Corner. Just a couple things that this, they wanted to talk about. Surprise. Sometimes you want the monster to have surprise. He says I do specially prepared rooms for this. I just give him surprise if that's what you wanted. But I have specially prepared rooms with features like darkness that goes on and off, silence spells to prevent you from hearing anything, hidden animals, magic mouth are very useful to draw players' attention to the wrong place at the right time. And I like that quite a bit, right? Something that you would hear and would clearly cause the players to look or find out what it is, where something else comes from the opposite direction. And again, they talk about this a lot in here, this idea of like not all monsters are stupid and most monsters aren't completely stupid, and they should have trips and traps or things set up where they live. If they anticipate someone might come in after them, they should have things set up that give them an advantage. And I think as a good DM, you probably should do more of that, or at least I should do more of that than I did when I was younger. The backfire. He loves the idea of magic users that you encounter, NPCs, having learned new spells just like your players could. But he also says you should consider the failures that might occur, things like the owlbear that were created, and use that as a way to create new, interesting monsters. And finally, sort of back to the original discussion, the idea of using illusions in the dungeon. Now, I think in fairness, you've got to have someone who could cast those illusions, right? You're not going to have a group of bugbears with an illusion that they just found, unless there's a magic user that they're working with, or an illusionist, more to the point. But he said, one thing is to see a room full of something dangerous that's not really there, to keep people, for example, away from treasure or from going down a passageway you don't want them to go down. Or the flip side is the illusion that makes the room look perfectly normal and it's filled with snakes, or it's a giant pit, or spikes, or something bad, but you don't see it because of the illusion. And I think both of those are really clever ideas. Again, it has to make sense in terms of who's in the dungeon that casts this magic, but that's the kind of thing people would use as defenses, I think. And the last I just wanted to share with you, there's an advertisement. There's not a lot of advertisements in the Beholder, but here's one for Chronicle Miniatures. Okay, so some artwork. Here is Alexander Self's Fally. This is the dungeon shop. These guys are being hanged, and it says hanging Christmas decorations going cheap. And there's a little woman who's an orc looking here at the decorations she could get, which are the players, or the characters that you normally see. This is, I think, Guy Duke's art. It's from his adventure. You see this Viking boat, and then this little close-up of the front of the boat, and then these little stone statues, which are one of the things you have to deal with in that adventure. That's it for our look at the Beholder number 23. This is the back cover. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you're enjoying this series, and I hope you're subscribed. If you have friends who might enjoy our content, please send them our way. Hopefully they will be subscribers as well. Hope you guys have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. Until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.